I know it's my line of work, and so I look at them a little more than what maybe you will, but remember call letters. Just remember call letters because they matter a lot in the industry that we work in, and quite frankly, in your life. CJOB is a great radio station. It's a place that's heritage, and Greg Mackling is one of those individuals that makes it that. Greg, good to have you coming down the road with us.
It's my pleasure, Joel. Thanks for having us. We miss coming down to see you, let me tell you that.
Well, it'll happen. I mean, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, he's north of the border, and, we're getting to the point where it feels like, Greg, we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know what the sense is in Manitoba.
Well, right now, it's just about impossible for us to come and see you because there's probably several dozen pieces of farm machinery. There are trucks of all sizes blocking the border at Emerson. That's on our side of the international line, as my Grammy used to call it, the line. And Pembina, North Dakota, which is the fifth busiest border crossing that is shared between our two countries. So it's a busy place, but right now, there's not much going back and forth.
Yeah, I've got some trucker buddies that make that trip. One individual that is very passionate, not in agreement with the truckers. I'm just going to be upfront with you about this. He wants to do trade. He wants to do commerce, and, he's Catholic. So my assumption is with what he said to me the other day on the phone, he's going to confession because that guy was cussing. He was mad, Greg. Are you hearing some of that up there?
Listen, Joel, here's the situation. 90% of the drivers in that industry in trucking in Canada are vaccinated. It very closely mimics the population here in Canada in terms of first and second doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. So those who want to work are working. And if you're not vaccinated, you can still run province to province, east to west, Manitoba to British Columbia all the way to the east coast of Canada. So I've got a lot of friends in the trucking industry. My wife spent 17 years in that industry. And let me tell you, those that are hauling are working their backsides off, and they are quite frustrated that anybody who would portray themselves as a trucker is preventing them from doing their line, their chosen profession.
Does the sheer visual make it look bigger than what it is? I was a state senator, and if 200 people went outside the Capitol, if 300 people 400 people went outside the Capitol to protest, we would have went, 400 people. We maybe ticked some people off, but that wasn't thousands. That wasn't anything like that. But you know what? If every one of them 200 people would have brought a semi and parked it there, now it gets your attention. And so is it as big as what they're attempting to make it look and be?
Listen, you've seen the visuals. I know you're a well-read individual. Comparisons and conversations about global warming, and greenhouse gas emissions, and you'll see the graphics about how much space a bicycle takes on a road, how much room one individual inside a car takes, and how much room 47 people on a bus take. So you know that the size of that equipment is magnifying multiple times the impact, the visual of these protests, of these blockades. And in Ottawa, there's no doubt there are thousands of people out there, in particular during the weekend. Nobody's disputing that. It's become a huge party in the national capital. But with regard to what's going on at the border, at Emerson and Pembina, there's several dozen vehicles. And that, of course, if they're large enough, is going to create a tremendous visual, no question about it.
I could get into one of those rings and run it. I know how to crank her up. I know how to shift. I know how to get it out of there. So it's a world I lived around, I guess is my point, a heavy equipment operation. So I have to ask you this. How do you get it out of there? Because you stack them in like cordwood, and it cannot be easy. And then you put the tow truck boys, in a position where they don't know what side they're on, and now you got big trouble. How the heck do you get them out of there?
I don't even think you have to go as deep, Joel, as the tow truck operators. You have Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They're there. They're the guys that are part of the community, the men and women of the mounted police in Canada. They live in the communities that they're serving. And so we're not seeing anything happening at that border. There are no tickets to our knowledge, and we get an update every day. We understand there hasn't been a single ticket written at the border. We haven't heard of any attempts to move any of these vehicles, whether they're attended or not. It's basically a wait and see approach right now. We've been told that there have been conversations between the organizers and police, but absolutely zero movement. And in Ottawa, that's been part of the issue. The police have wanted the tow truck companies to come in, the operators to come in. They're refusing to do so because some of these people are their customers. And there's also, listen, they may be small in number overall, but there's a good chunk of the population that agrees with the essence of these protests, of what they're trying to do. And so there are some people just not prepared to get out in front of it. And that includes police officers who are not prepared to write tickets and get in the middle of this. And that's part of the reason why some people think the Prime Minister has done what he did yesterday, and that's to invoke this Emergency Act that would allow and emphasizes and gives these police forces more power to go ahead and do exactly what a lot of Canadians wish they would go and do, and that's start breaking these barricades and these blockades up.
So is there any talk about military?
No.
Okay.
No. The Prime Minister has been very clear that this does not extend to the military.
Okay.
And yeah, I can't imagine that happening in this country, Joel, but frustrations are real. And so there are demands by a lot of people to say, hey, you've made your point. It's time for you to move along. And the protesters are saying, until we get exactly what we want, we aren't going anywhere.
So has there been any survey done? Are these independent truckers? Because I can tell you this, if they were Dan's Super Value, and Dan's Super Value owned all of these rigs, and I'm sorry to use an actual name from down in our country, but you see them on the roadways and byways here all the time. If they were Penner, let me use that as an example, right on the north side of the border here. Jack's family, if they were them, my assumption is they'd fire them. They got a job to do. They got to get out there. They got to turn out product. They got to make money. They got to, but if they're sitting there making a political protest, then I'd fire them.
Well, like I said, I know a lot of people in the industry as you do, Joel. And I, in fact, had a phone call on the weekend from somebody who has 2 million crash-free miles under her belt. And she said, Greg, can you do us a favor? Can you stop calling them truckers? Because the truckers are driving. The truckers are hauling. These are not truckers. And what's going on in Los Angeles. You know what's going on in Vancouver, all up and down the West Coast. There is freight to haul galore. Yeah. So if you want to be working, you're working. And so once again, to reiterate, the 50,000 watt blowtorch, we stretch right into North Dakota. Before the sun goes down on a clear day, people are listening in North Dakota, in South Dakota. They're driving rig. They text with us. They're listening to our programs. And in fact, that's how we got alerted to this last week, with somebody on your side of the border who said, hey, what's going on? I'm trying to get home, and there's this long lineup of trucks. And my logs now are going to be messed up. It's going to ruin the number of hours I can haul next week. And so the frustration is very elevated within the trucking community, because there's a genuine sense, not to overstate it, that the people that are doing this, they are not an integral part of the trucking system or the trucking economy. They've taken themselves out if they're not driving.
She makes a great point. Yeah, you're right. I mean, to call them truckers diminishes, the value of and the honor of being a trucker, in my personal opinion. Down here during the pandemic and coming out of this whole hunkered down mode, my friends build houses. And the one thing that they continually said was, I need that lumber out of Canada. I'm counting on Canada for so much. Then you go sit around a coffee shop and start talking to farmers. They're about to hit the field. It may not look like it around here, but it's mid-February. I've seen tires turning in fields as early as the middle of March to the end of March. They need fertilizer that comes from Canada in many cases. We've been partners for a long, long time. How is this going to affect that? Because one of the many concerns we have, and everybody's talking about, is inflation.
Yeah, inflation, and that was before this happened, right? This has been for months now. And I'll really localize it for both sides of the border. New Flyer Industries, they build the transit buses. Their head office is in Winnipeg. They've got a production line in Crookston, Minnesota. I worked for that company for several years. Those lines are completely integrated, the manufacturing line. So a shell of a bus gets welded and gets mapped out and gets started here in Winnipeg. It goes on a flatbed truck, goes to Crookston, Minnesota, where all the components get put in, the seats, the steering wheels, the wheels, all the electronics, all the finishing, all the windows go in Crookston, Minnesota. And then they drive that bus off the line. Those assembly lines are just like in Ontario and Michigan, where they're completely integrated. And right now, that assembly line is kaput. It's completely separated by what's going on here. That's the best example that I can give you, Joel.
So what's the mindset of the Canadian people? Have they had it? Is the protest, is it done? Is it like, listen, you've made your point. You don't want to get vaccinated. You believe that freedom allows you to be one of the higher percentage of people that can die. And I realize, Canada has taken a much tougher stance when it comes to vaccination, but that's neither here nor there. My point is this, what is the attitude of the Canadian people when they look at this? Do they say enough?
Some people say enough is enough. Some people say they're digging in their heels. And it's not just the 10% that aren't vaccinated. There are people who are double and triple vaccinated who say enough is enough. But for a lot of us, Joel, this is about the protection of our healthcare system. 1.4 million people in Manitoba, single payer. There's no insurance here. It's all a public system. At regular times, we have about 75 ICU beds. Right now, we've ramped that up to about 130, and about 100 of them are full right now. We've got doctors and nurses that have been working nonstop for 22 months here. And so for a lot of us, hey, man, I'm done too. I don't want to wear a mask anymore. I don't want to show a vaccination pass. But this is about protecting our healthcare system and our frontline healthcare workers. And that's what it is about, I would say, for a majority of Canadians.
Okay, Greg, I get to do this every now and then as well. I see the Blue Bombers, I see the Jets. On a Room Raider scale, you get a 10 out of 10, buddy. You realize that,
Thank you very much.
All right, good visiting with you. We're going to call again someday.